It's amazing the involvement we found of women in the agricultural sector. Most of the farmers in Senegal are women. Many of the men have had to leave the agricultural areas to go to the city to try to find gainful employment there. Certainly ways to engage women is I think, a takeaway. Certainly ways to engage the cooperative experience and to add to it. My takeaway, and I suppose all of us, when we come back, you wonder what would you like to do if you could wave a magic wand? And I have two things I hope before I'm done might be able to help. And I know they have desperate need for refrigeration, reliability for the fishing industry. And we've found this as we've looked at global production. So much waste can occur after the production has been successful. In the case of the fishing villages, it was great to catch the fish and to bring it in, and then you hoped you had refrigeration for the fish, or it would all be for naught. So certainly the refrigeration is something that's just on my mind. You know, certainly there's some co-op right here that could help out in generating useful electricity. And the other one, it sounds silly, but the fishermen, lots of occurrences of this, they need small engine repair facilities. Often we give the initial equipment, and then all of a sudden the boat motors, or maybe we saw solar panel systems that worked and well systems that worked, but then the backup for the continuation of the repair just wasn't there. We saw a lot of idled projects because the initiation was strong, but the sustainability of it just was not there. So, well, much thanks to the support that we've received from NCBA on the wonderful work in Senegal, and we look forward to continued involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. That's very good. Well, you've heard the comments now of two representing U.S. organizations on what we're doing. Now we're going to move to the international side, and we're delighted to have the Minister of Cooperative Development in Kenya here. I'm looking forward to meeting and visiting with you more because I've spent a fair amount of time in Kenya, and I'm sure we have a number of friends in common.
Great.
But I'll call on you at this time, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come here. Thank you very much for the invitation. To all of you who know my minister, Honorable Joseph Nyaga, he sends his greetings. He would have loved to be here, but hopes to link up with you in the course of the year. Basically, I will be talking about the social and the economic developments or the impact of the OCDC assistance to cooperatives in Kenya. Cooperatives in Kenya, we are number 7 in the world, and we are number 1 in Africa, and I believe that is why we are here to share our experiences and more so the assistance given to us by the US aid through the OCDC. An example I'll be touching is Githunguri Dairy Farmers Cooperatives. This is where Land O'Lakes could be known to a few people, but this is an organization that receives funds from USAID and is assisting dairy farmers, cooperatives to increase their production and to market their milk, increasing the milk production by provision of AI services. So one such is the Githunguri Dairy Farmers Cooperative Society that was started in 1961 with just 31 members. And currently the membership of Githunguri Dairy Farmers is over 12,000 active members, delivering 150,000 liters of milk to the society daily. The society has 58 collection centers widespread over a whole constituency, Githunguri. In fact, it is one of the richest constituencies in my country because of the milk that they are able to process and taken to the market the same day. So currently the society provides stores for resale, the AI services because of Land O'Lakes. And Land O'Lakes is a member of the Overseas Cooperative Development Council. Secondly, we have the Cooperative Development Program, which is also a member of the OCDC, in collaboration with the Ministry of Cooperatives Development and Marketing, of which I serve. They offer training to farmers groups, and the training is done at our cooperative college, which has since become a university now. They offer agri and cooperative training and consultancy to farmers groups. This is to improve the technical capacity of the Kenya farmers through coaching and training. The same have also established an information center to ensure that the Kenyan cooperatives continue to benefit from distant learning and sharing of best practices even after their project, meaning they are able to help the farmers who come to the college for training for 2 weeks to network and learn best practices from other farmers. We also have the Kenya Maize Development Program, KMD. This is done by ACDI VOCA, and I'm glad they once came up to my village. Considering that maize is a staple food in Kenya, there is therefore need to increase its productivity, improve marketing, and rationalize the government policy necessitated by the initiation of this program. So ACDI VOCA, that is Agricultural Cooperative Development International, and volunteers in Overseas Cooperative Assistance, has been implementing the Kenya Maize Development Program and a USAID-funded program since 2010. And I mean, in 2010, we managed to get US dollars 11.2 million to help the Kenya maize farmer. And as a result, many farmers, especially in the western part of Kenya, were able to triple their maize yield from 8 bags, for example, per acre to 32 bags per acre. The third program, which we're really grateful for OCDC, we have WOCU, World Credit Union. And in Kenya currently, we have SACCOs. The ones I've dealt with first are farmers cooperatives. Now we have the savings credit cooperatives, where people pool their resources together, funds. And in this, 4 in every 5 people definitely is a member of a savings and credit cooperative society in my country. So WOCU helped us to form or to strengthen the SACCO, Society Regulatory Authority of 2008. We needed a regulator to regulate the cooperative, the savings cooperative societies to ensure safety of members' deposits. So we have what we call SASRA in Kenya, and WOCU played a big role in strengthening the Kenya savings credit cooperatives so that they can meet the new regulations. SACCOs play an increasing important role in Kenya's financial services. And In this regard, WOCU assisted the cooperative movement to come up with the SACCO regulatory authority that assists in implementing SACCO regulatory prudential standards as well as licensing cooperatives. Right now, if you don't have a SASRA certificate to ensure that members' deposits are safe, then you will not be given the certificate to operate the SACCO. The fourth one is the U.S. dairy cooperative called Hoops for Africa. This organization, among others, have embarked on a public-private partnership to support a campaign to educate at least 2 million people in Africa about preventing HIV and AIDS and address the nutritional needs of people who already have the disease. In Kenya, they work with groups, including the dairy cooperatives, through conducting sports clinics and exhibition. Basically to say that U.S. Dairy Cooperatives Hoops for Africa works with established cooperatives. And finally, and not least, the USID works with the Leaders for Tomorrow, and we know that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, and you meet many of them when you are in the Daystar University. That is where they are. So USID, we have what you call Yes Youth Can. The USID youth component, through this arrangement, youth groups are identified and trained so that they can start their own businesses by working together, even if they have a small capital. We have youth enterprise funds from our country, but then as a nation, you will need the civil society, the CBOs, the donor community to help in putting up the youth together. So youths are also trained in the areas of democracy and good governance. In conclusion, it is worth to note that in developing countries, cooperatives develop in or operate in difficult environment, as has been said by my sister on issues of in Senegal, very difficult environments. And despite stunning achievements and large-scale successes, as I have mentioned, they still face a lot of problems, which are the consequences of operating in extremely challenging contexts. And so I'm calling, therefore, on all of us to measure up to the task, really to add on to what Dame Pauline has said, campaigning. We have to get people to stand up to the task so that we can help the world poor to develop. And really, that is what cooperatives is all about. And we all know that cooperatives could be the fastest growing enterprises by the end of this year, thanks to the United Nations for declaring 2012 the year of cooperatives. Thank you.
Asante Sana.
Oh, karibu, karibu. Now I have a brother
Thank
here
you very
who
much.
is speaking our language.
Well, I'm going to call now on, I met the representative from the embassy earlier, and he gave me permission to call him Benny, so I'm going to say Benny.
Thank you. Thank you, Gordon, and thank you for inviting the Embassy of Indonesia. I'm Benjamin Karnadi. I'm the Economic Counselor of the Indonesian Embassy, and I should thank the NCBA and also the ICA for inviting and organizing this event. This is the first time, actually, I have to speak on cooperatives. I have no, I'm not an expert on cooperatives, but one thing I can tell is my dad was the founder of the cooperatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia. So this is one thing, and sometimes when we talk in the afternoon while drinking tea, he told me about why cooperatives is the most compatible what you call it enterprise that has to be developed in my country. For start, I will tell you first about Indonesia. Indonesia is an archipelagic nation. We consist of 17,500 islands, 17,500 islands, and we have a coastal line of around 100,000 kilometers. We own the 40% of the tropical forest is in Indonesia. We are the largest Muslim populated. We are not a Muslim country, but we have the largest population that adheres to Islam as a religion, even bigger than the whole Middle East. We have 240 million people. I will tell you why this fits in, why cooperative is compatible and is the right and has to be more strengthened and developed in my country. Having said how big my country is, how it is actually not easy to govern because it's islands. It spreads. It has 3 time zones. It spreads from Seattle up to up to New York, and as I said, it has most populated by that adheres to Islam, but Islam is compatible with values of cooperatives and is also compatible with the values of democracy. As you know, since 1998, we embraced democracy. We are now the 4th largest democracy. We choose our leaders, the president directly. We have even elections up through the regional municipality level. The villages, the leaders of the villages are now directly elected by the people. Even in my kids' school, they elect their leader of the class directly. And so this is how I want to explain how democracy is now flourishing, and yet still compatible with how cooperative enterprises should be developed more. So Indonesia knows cooperative since the late 1800s. It's during the Dutch occupation that we are introduced to cooperative activities, and it has developed, it has grows, and it has experienced its ups and downs. It is backed by legislation since 1967, and then onwards to the latest legislation, National Law number 25 in 1992. But currently, that law is also now being, being, how do you say that? Reviewed. Thank you very much. Pardon for my English. Even though I was born in San Francisco, but I've never lived in the U.S. So pardon my. This is the only. I spent only almost 2 years here in the U.S. But trying to explain such a vast issue. And in Indonesia, it's developed when we get independence, when we gain our independence in 1945. The first vice president put this value enshrined this value of cooperatives in the first constitution of Indonesia, and it is based. He says that cooperative is the Soko Guru. Soko Guru means is the mother of all economic teaching, so of economic activities. So he puts this, enshrined this in the Constitution, and it's still there up to now. So the basic economic system that Indonesia has to actually implement is the cooperatives. Another thing that I have to say that it is compatible with the Islamic values, because the Islamic values also promote togetherness, promote a sharing of gains as well as burdens. And this is very much compatible to the people's life, from the village up to the city. Even though now we are exposed to market-based economy with open trade, with everything that entails under that, under the WTO, but still cooperative, small and medium and micro enterprises is the what I said, the Sokoguru of the economic system, the core of the economic system of Indonesia. And I can say I can tell you some numbers that we now have around 172,000 cooperatives, which has around 29 million members. But this is that is being able to be put into data. But the Department of Small and Medium Enterprises and Cooperatives, the Ministry of Small and Medium and Cooperatives of Indonesia, believes that the number is by far more than that. It could be like 40% more than, or at least 30% more than is known. So one challenge is we need to collect the more better data on the strength of our and the existence of our cooperatives. The field that our cooperatives is the sectors, economic sectors that our cooperatives in Indonesia is working mostly on is in the farming, in agriculture, in forestry. But there are also other sectors such as in the restaurants, in the hotel sectors. This is connected to to tourism, handicrafts, and everything. These are all produced by small businesses, cooperatives. Also, in the telecommunication sector, in Indonesia, internet penetration is growing up, but places where computers are is not much. So there are a lot of businesses built by cooperatives, what we call here you call this internet cafes, but these are owned by cooperatives in Indonesia. This is so connectivity in or what you call people get connected to the internet is somehow bridged by cooperatives. The challenges that we face is, I think, is similar in other countries. We need increased human capacity and increased access to funding and more streamlined business process, better management, better human capital, human capacity of the people in the cooperative itself. And this is that we need collaboration with other countries, and we have a lot of collaboration, especially with the U.S. that I need to mention here. The U.S. has been, the NCBA has been with Indonesia, with the cooperatives of Indonesia since 1977, strengthening our agricultural production, the farmers in the agricultural sector, particularly in commodities and in rice. Also, NCBA is working in provinces in Indonesia, in Central Java, as well as in some other. Java is the biggest island, but I mentioned that there is also presence of NCBA in other islands in Indonesia, in the South Celebes Islands, working also on improving what we call the Koperasi Unit Desa. Desa means village, so village cooperatives, so strengthening their capacity and know-how on cooperatives for smallholders and farmers. Also, collaboration with the U.S. cooperatives is on disaster relief. As you know, Indonesia, one of the islands of Indonesia, the province of Indonesia in the Aceh province was hit by a tsunami in 2004, which has a very devastating impact. A lot has lost life, but the world stood by Indonesia, including the U.S. Cooperatives, helped bring people back to their livelihood and to go back into their economic activities, also through cooperatives. A lot needs to be said. Actually, I cannot cover this in 10 minutes. But in all in all, the challenges are, again, we need a favorable business environment for cooperatives to flourish in Indonesia. And we need developing more capacity building, the human capacity for the cooperatives, for those working in the cooperatives, improving entrepreneurship, and introducing innovation, the use of information technology in cooperatives. This would certainly strengthen. And also important is to adhere to intellectual property rights and environmental sound practices of these cooperatives. We need to move away from a top-down approach. This, as you know, previously during the previous administration of Suharto, it is more a top-down approach, and he is successful in using cooperatives in what you call sending his message of his governance to the people, because cooperatives is very close, very dearly to the people in the village. So the previous administration, Suharto, uses cooperatives also as one means to inform what the government is doing and inform the people about the policies he's taking. So, but we need to gradually move away from this top-down approach. We need to empower the people from the bottom. And let cooperative flourish and bring better lives to the people. I think I should end there. And again, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you, Benny. We've had, you've heard presentations now from opposite ends of the world. We've had from Indonesia and then over in the country of Africa. You've also had presentations from two neighboring states here, North and South Dakota. You know, there's a lot of rivalry between those two states. I won't get into that. You know, my wife is from South Dakota.
Okay.
And her father had a lot of stories about North Dakota. But one of them, I'll just tell you a Minnesota story. There was some years ago, there was a dispute of the border up in the northern part where North Dakota joined Minnesota. And it was a question as to whether it was really where the boundary line was. And they finally determined that the boundary line was a little further east. And so they established the boundary line, what was formerly North Dakota now is part of Minnesota. So they interviewed a farmer up there, and they asked him, the one that had been affected by that, and they said, well, what do you think about this? He said, you know, you were in North Dakota, now you're a Minnesotan. He said, well, he said, it isn't too bad. He said, I don't think I could have stood another one of those North Dakota winters. Well, I hope you've all had a chance to make some notations on questions that you want to pose of the panel. And the panel, too, you can question each other. I want to invite you to do that. But as the moderator, I guess I have the privilege of starting out with the first question. And I'll start out, and I'm going to ask Dennis this question about, in North Dakota, you've described, you know, the creation of that foundation, and obviously it's been very successful. You've really generated a lot of capital to help you with these projects in the developing countries. How much, if any, are you getting any funding from USAID?
Yes, NRECA approaches the Congress of this country yearly to ask for support. I think the request has been in the neighborhood of $10 million. The international program that NRECA's, which is NRECA's subsidiary, gets funding from that sources. The countries that they work in will often provide some funding for the projects. The World Bank is often called upon to be a contributor. There are other large international funds that have philanthropic goals that will contribute money. The project that I was working on in Uganda had actually gotten a fair amount of funding from Stockholm, from a Swedish concern. I guess I don't remember specifically the name of it. But so they have these very many sources of funding. The Ugandan government had set up a REA, just like our country set up an REA, and they too were charged with the responsibility to take some of their resources and use it to fund the development of the cooperative. So the funding comes into NRECA International, which is the corporate entity that does this work and contracts with the companies from very many sources, including the United States government.
Thank you. Well, does anyone want to pose a question? We've got microphones on both sides of the room, and you can just come up there and pose your question. Here we have a questioner over here, and please address the person that you want to have the answer from, if you will.
Yes, thanks, Gordon. Question for the Kenyan minister. She talked about the importance of the World Council of Credit Unions in helping with the regulatory process. Could you talk about the importance of credit unions in Kenya and how that provides people with access to savings and credit, and your knowledge about perhaps the role that women play in credit unions?
Oh,
You want to respond to that?
I can't respond. I thought there could be other questions. Thank you very much. Sorry, I couldn't go into details because of the 10 minutes, and really it was an overview of the assistance that we get as a country from OCDC. Definitely when you come to the work WOCO has done, you know that you have the Shilingi project in Kisumu that you give credit to smallholder farmers to purchase seeds and also market as a group. And Shilingi is a shilling also saving. You have this small box that that WOCO has also given to the women, so that whatever is left extra after purchasing the basic needs of the home, you keep that change in a box. And with time, as you open it up, you will discover that you have a lot of money. So basically, that is there is so much that you've really done. I think I just went into the latest that you have done to help us form the regulatory authority. The credits in my country play a very big role in such that almost over 31% of our GDP is from the SACCOs or the credit unions. And I said 4 in 5 people are members of a cooperative society. Basically, almost every other Kenyan is educated from money from the SACCO, because as soon as you're employed, you join a SACCO. We have those in the informal sector, the taxi and the basic taxi, which we call boda boda, you know, this either a bicycle or a motorbike. People come together, making a saving, a deposit at the end of the day. I must say, most of the buildings in Nairobi are owned by cooperative societies. So really a major, the credit unions in my country play a major role, and WOCU has not come to stay in the city. Maybe the only work they do in the city is for the SACCO regulatory authority. They are in the villages. Thank you.
The National Farmers Union representative, you said a little bit about land grabs in Africa and about developing countries perching on local agriculture and driving it out. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I think you have two concerns going on in Senegal. And the first is certainly foreign acquisitions of the land, which inevitably threatens to displace the local farmers. And then of great concern is the government itself being very anxious about land that is not very productive, or as productive as they feel it should be. And because Senegal is in the condition of certainly having food insecurity needs, the government has a concern to make that land as productive as possible. So it becomes a bit of the old battle of, is large agriculture the only way in which you can usefully produce maximum value of literally food that will be eaten? There's definitely signs that the government feels forced into that position of trying to feed its people by literally sometimes displacing people.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Yeah, hello. My name is William Sparks with ACDI VOCA. This question is for the Honorable Minister of Kenya. You described projects where international NGOs were developing cooperatives and doing a variety of activities. With USAID Forward and other donors looking for more localization type of activities and local capacity building to help institutions carry on that cooperative development work, in Kenya, which institutions do you see as best positioned for that development to be able to help cooperatives down the road, and what type of capacity building activities do they specifically need?
Most of the USAID projects. We have USAID here in Nairobi, we have in Eldoret. They deal in democracy as well as training of the cooperative societies. Now, talking about ACDI VOCA, I did mention that maize is a staple food in Kenya. And ACDI VOCA have been working on the areas of maize growers. The capacity that they do is training farmers on the right seeds, training farmers on marketing, when to sell their maize, and helping them to get the correct fertilizer at the right time. And I wouldn't be able to single out which would be the best group to work with. To us, all of them have worked wherever the USAID or the ACDI VOCA have worked. Really, the mode of the channel or the group that is best to do this would definitely be the direction they have taken now, going directly to the cooperative societies instead of through the government ministries, cutting or reducing bureaucracy is a better way. I think I can conclude that way.
My name is Pamela Baldwin, and I heard about this forum because I'm part of a food co-op startup in Virginia, but I was really motivated to come primarily because I'm also a retired USAID officer and had the opportunity to work on co-op development in a number of countries. My question is about gender in cooperative development. My own experience is that women are more often than not the backbone and the enduring force in cooperative development. And so I'd welcome comments on this from anyone on the panel.
I would just comment on what I experienced in Senegal. I see the leadership in the co-ops that we visited still being almost 100% men. I mean, literally whoever the president is. But right behind them, I really see strong development of women's leadership. And in fact, I think all co-ops that have international activities would really be well served and also do a great service by helping women just punch through that next level of leadership. I saw a lot of recognition by the male leadership of the roles that women play, but I think they're just not quite at the level to really maximize what they could offer, but close.
On my side, there is wind of change in Kenya. We have a new constitution that says that you must not have more than 2/3 of one gender, meaning a third must be of one gender. So basically, initially, it was all men. But now people are looking at how do we accommodate the women. Either you're expanding or you're going to reduce the men in the board and to have more women. I represent a constituency, and most of the cooperatives in my constituency are led by women. There is one basically that they grow legumes, and all the top 3 are women, and women trust people. I mean, they're more trusted when it comes to money. Sorry, gentlemen, but that's what happens. That's what happens in the rural areas. And the best savers are women. In the Ministry of Cooperatives Development, we have a desk specifically to deal with women, savings, and credit. The best savers are women. So you will find most of the rural savings and credit unions are for women, are run by women. So I think we are still in the process of engendering the cooperative movement. But well, women, we have to work on them too to come up for election. You know that to be in the board of any cooperative movement, you have to offer yourself for election. So women also have to offer, and I take this opportunity to encourage women to come out for elective positions. Thank you.
Very good. Pauline, would you like to comment?
Oh, okay.
Can I just confirm that I think you said women are the backbone of the movement. It's true across the world, I can tell you, because the ICA has done research on this, that women are the backbone of the movement right across the world. And the ICA has got very active women's gender equality policies working. We've got committees in the Asia-Pacific region, in the Americas region, in South America, Latin America, very active women's groups coming together to drive women's engagement in cooperatives. But there's always a glass ceiling which they've got to break through, and that's exactly, I think, what the Minister is speaking about. If you think it took 115 years to get a woman president of the ICA, you know, you can see the sort of difficulties we have, but there is a real need for good, and there are great women out there, great, competent women. We just need to encourage them and encourage the men to encourage them into positions of responsibility.
Yeah. I'd like to just address that too. I said, you know, my observation going in a number of different countries I've been in, and the first one of the first assignments I had was in the Soviet Union after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it was, you know, I was working out in a rural area and it was an utter disaster. And in meeting with those people, I became fully convinced that the women were the ones that held that society together, even among all of that. And it was just, and that's true in so many other cases. I'll just cite one example. I was in Rwanda in June, CHF. We've got a project in Rwanda, and a group of women wanted to create their own institution for saving and lending. And it was a closed-end investment trust, in effect. But what they did is there were 16 women. They met every Thursday, and they contributed into a pot 100 Ugandan shillings into that pot. They had another pot, they would contribute 50 Ugandan shillings, and that was for purposes of emergency. The women could make a case. They'd come and say, we'd like to borrow money. This one woman said, I'd like to borrow money to buy a chicken. So they lent her money to buy the chicken. And she told the story. She was able to buy the chicken. She sold the eggs and sold some of the chicks, paid the money back, came back and borrowed money again for a goat. She sold the goat's milk and sold the little goats, and she had a little enterprise. But the thing that was just amazing, at least impressed me, here was a self-help cooperative working on a very basic basis. And they took care of the security issues. They had a box with all of the records in the box. The treasurer of the group had the possession of the box, but didn't have a key. There were 3 padlocks on that box, and there was a different woman in the group had the separate key. And they came and they opened up the box, and then they made the report, conducted the business, locked the box up again, and met the next Thursday. And I thought it was really creative. But that's an example, and they were all women. And they were, you know, they were doing it on their own, and it was just very impressive. Okay, I don't want to shut up. We got a question over here.
Hi, my name is Amy Kokenar. I'm with NCBA. Dame Pauline Green mentioned a statistic earlier in her speech that by 2050 we're going to have to increase agricultural production by 70% to feed all the population of the world. And in the countries where we work, Indonesia is a great example of how those agricultural cooperatives have been able to go to scale. For example, working with the private sector, our partner with Cooperative Business International, and are operating on global markets and exporting coffee, spices, and other products. My question to any of the panelists is, what are the challenges for cooperatives in your countries in terms of going to scale? What are the main barriers for further development of your cooperative sector? And then I have one other question for Mr. Carnadi. The United States just signed a compact, a Millennium Challenge compact with your country for $600 million. The compact will be focusing on child nutrition and also on sustainable livelihood opportunities through an initiative called Green Prosperity. And I was wondering, even though it's still in formulation, does your government see a role for cooperatives in that initiative? Thank you.
Should I answer the last? Okay. Yes, indeed. President Obama and our president endorsed the Millennium Challenge Cooperation, which is in the amount of $600 million US, and this will be for projects such as on the green economy, expanding renewable energy, also in poverty alleviation, in malnutrition. And I think because some of the issue that will be addressed is very close to the people's livelihood, to the rural areas. I think cooperatives has to play a big role in making sure that this project will succeed. And I think the government of Indonesia is establishing together with the MCC, what we call the Indonesian office, or the office that oversees implementation of this project. So I think there is also the U.S. representative here in Washington, D.C. And we actually held a stakeholders meeting that the MCC held in its office, explaining about what this project was on, and how the stakeholders can take part in doing some of these projects. So I think we can arrange another session. We will talk with the MCC, and if we can invite maybe the NCBA to have to invite their members and engage the MCC. I think. Thank you.
Has answered part B. I will answer the part A. And this was on the challenges that we face in case you want to go large scale. If you remember my presentation, I did say that USAID gave the Kenya Maize Development Program, ACDI VOCA, 11.2 million in 2010. Now, the biggest challenge are natural disasters, climate change. You can plant the maize, and you know we consume a lot of maize as a country, and many times we are a food shortage country. So all the time we have to get maize imported from outside Kenya. So you can plant, climate change issues come, the rains will not come, you know, unpredictable rains. It's unfortunate that we are still using rain-fed agriculture. We are yet to fully develop irrigation agriculture. So this will be our biggest challenge for going large scale. The rains will either come late, will not come, or come in floods when it comes. So that is the biggest challenge that we would have. Thank you.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Petra Keynes. I'm I'm an independent consultant that's interested in green infrastructure finance and green workforce development, but I've done, I've visited the Federation of Southern Cooperatives and I've done some work with them. But my question in general is about sustainable economic development. And I've heard a lot about USAID and ACDI VOCA, and I just want to throw this out there. In the interest of sustainable economic development and weaning countries off of foreign aid, though well-intentioned, what are the mechanisms that are out there to, establish capital markets and fair trade so that these cooperative business models no longer need to depend on foreign aid? Are there examples out there where, we're building in accountability of local governments and, what examples out there that are great and thriving where they will be able to now, there's a capital market being established where they no longer need to depend on aid. Are those examples out there? And, is federal aid, though well-intentioned, is the movement to wean countries off of foreign aid happening? And, give me any examples and whatever you.
I think maybe it's
Anybody want to take that?
I think the model of electrification is a good one in that it has a built-in endpoint to it. I mean, at some point you electrify the service territory in which you start out to do, and the basics of it is that it's supposed to pay its way at that point. And so all the cooperatives in our country have reached that point of sustainability and scale and things like that. In Uganda, the government acknowledges that initially there has to be a lot of upfront help and in terms of grants and low-cost financing and other things like that. But ultimately, with the members of the cooperative paying their bills and paying their bills on time, and that allows them to pay their power bill and pay their staff. And so over a course of years, then it does become sustainable without any other infusion of cash. It was also interesting to me that in the startup of these two cooperatives in Uganda, they have immediately started with a system of prepaid metering. So unlike our country where you can buy your electricity and if you get around to paying the bill, you'll get some more, in Uganda, you have to go to the co-op and you put down your shillings and they send you home with a little card that you insert into your meter. And the meter tracks your consumption, and when your card is out of money, then you're out of power. And so they have no bad debt collection problems like we do here in America. It's all done up front. It works really, really well. But the scale that they're challenged with is the scale of getting equipment, getting inventory, getting new transformers, getting new line, and power supply. They have quite a few problems. This is going back to the earlier question about getting to scale, if I can answer two at once. But real challenges with power supply in the country of Uganda. The power supply is owned by the government, and then the cooperatives, distribute the power. And so they buy it from another source and redistribute it. They have many outages every day, very commonplace. The power goes out in the rural co-ops. They're kind of literally like we were at the end of the line, and so you're not the biggest customer, and you don't get to have it when you need it necessarily. And this has real life examples. I mean, this is important stuff. We traveled out to the cooperative. It took about 6 hours to get the last jaunt, and we got there about 5 in the afternoon. We were tired, we were hungry, and man, would have cold beer have tasted good. The co-op had lost power for 6 hours that day, so the hotel's refrigeration had been down, so we had warm beer when we got there. No. This is really tough stuff, but